corruption case management manual, plea bargain, sentencing guidelines, information sharing. Now, for example, if your case is not strong, don't go to court. You don't fight corruption on the pages of newspaper. So if you are not sure that you will secure a conviction, don't go to court. So you find that the cases where the evidence is very strong, they are being filed. And even the public can tell. A non-lawyer, a non-judge can say, all of this. So if this is not true, say it is not true and prove it. So this is where we're going to now. And we have the legal framework to support that.
I'll come back to you on that part of the legal framework, because some will say by the time they get a conviction, they might just go to jail for 2-3 years. Is it possible to take that up? Well, we'll come back to
just before you come back to me, do you prove the point when the person is in jail for 10 years, or you prove a conviction, even for 1 day, is a conviction, and it has an impact? It can deny you of ever contesting for public office. You cannot sit on the board of a company like a bank because you'll be convicted of an offense that has to do with moral turpitude. There are many things that a conviction does. Okay? So why do you think those who are fighting convictions are fighting conviction? If it has no impact, why would you fight it? So a 1-day conviction is as impactful as a 100 days conviction. So, mind you, criminals like to look good. People who steal public funds will then go and build hospitals in their village with money they have stolen, build schools. They want to look good. Okay? So we need to recognize that conviction, 1 year, 6 months, 2 days, a former bank MD was convicted. She got 6 months, but all of the assets were recovered. She can't sit on anybody anymore. I'm talking about Cecilia Ibro. It's not possible. That conviction will continue to resonate in the family forever. So you've got to recognize the impact of a conviction. But when you convict small fries and you don't convict the big fish, the message out there is that corruption pays.
Mr. Musikili, forgive me if I didn't get that very well. The question I want to ask, in the course of your investigating some of these cases that have been brought up, some of them not really taken to court yet, would you say what the Prof has talked about here is applicable, where they actually like short-circuiting the processes just so that they don't get to a conviction? Or is it that the institutions are not strong enough, like you said earlier?
Well, I agree entirely with him. There are governors, ex-governors that are in court since 2007, playing all manner of tricks for the case not to end. But even when cases end, the political will to fight corruption is important. Look at Pt.3 here, the late former governor of Bayelsa, who was convicted. He was later given presidential pardon. Till this day, nobody has told us why he was pardoned. And so what kind of message is government passing when you do that? So, and today he's being given state burial in his state. Structures and rules are being named after him. So what kind of message are we passing to people? That's by the way. Now, I want to first of all respond to what he said about the Panama Papers not providing much, or that is just unfolding. First, I agree with him that, of course, the disclosure, the regulations are just unfolding, but it gives government some hint about what to look at, what to investigate. I'm not aware that the Nigerian government has made any comment to say, look, we are going to look at this, we're going to consider this. Now, he is saying that it's legal to have offshore entities. That is correct. And not everyone who has countries, who has companies in tax havens are criminals. But of course, you must understand the context of some of the regulations that our newspaper, have made so far. Of course, we got those documents, but then we put them in context for people to understand. I give you an example. In the case of Bukola Saraki, we've reported that while he didn't quite disclose a lot of the assets, I think that is clear enough. So you cannot say the Panama paper hasn't provided that kind of evidence for you. In the case of David Mark, we've shown that while being a public officer, he incorporated and has been running 8 offshore. That's the one that we've so far identified, 8 companies. Is that not something for government to look at? Then we've shown that a particular company that came to do business in Nigeria, Skansen of Norway, was in partnership with former General Theophilus Danjuma. And then they were accused of paying corruption all around Africa. I think that's something that government has to look at. Of course, when it comes to business people like Dangote, except you are able to establish that there was tax avoidance or whatever, you cannot accuse them of any wrongdoing. But of course, it's something that government has to look at. Why is it that people go abroad to incorporate companies that are simply share entities? What I mean by share entities are companies that have no office locations, they have no staff, they do no business there. Why do people, what is the motivation for incorporating such a company? I think our people need to understand what the Panama paper is about. It's about a Panamanian firm that was busy providing secrecy for share companies, for officials all around the world. And I think government must not trivialize it. From the way he said, it doesn't appear to me that our government understands the importance
I need to respond to that.
coming from the Panama Papers. Maybe because people don't quite understand what is involved. We did a story recently about MTN passing some of its funding to offshore companies in Cyprus. That is basically going to set up a company in Cyprus and pretending to be buying service from that share company. By that way, they pay less tax here in Nigeria. Our government, our officials need to understand that. That's something that our detectives will be trained at, to know that people simply use share companies not to do any legitimate business most of the time, but either to hide assets or to avoid tax.
Mr. Musikili, when you say that the government is not reacting to the Panama Papers, it's still early doors. I mean, government is probably still looking at it and is deciding what exactly they're going to do. But Professor here wants to respond to something that you said.
I need to quickly respond to some of the things you have said. I did not say that government will not act on the Panama Papers. I said it's still early in the day. The revelation came when? April 3rd? Or thereabouts.
A few days ago.
Just a few days ago. So I never said that government would not act on the Panama Papers. Secondly, I did not say that public officers who use such mechanisms to launder funds, that government should overlook it. I didn't say so. Indeed, I agree with him that government must act on those areas where the evidence is very clear. So far, those who have been mentioned have denied. Of course, it's easy to deny. When the investigation is done and you're found culpable and the evidence is taken, then of course the next step will be taken. So hang on, let me just finish. I agree also that if you incorporate a shell company or buy one off the shelf to launder funds or diminish the capacity of government to earn tax because you declare your profit has been made in that tax haven rather than where you really earn the profit, I agree that that should be sanctioned. We're on the same page on that. What I said is that it's early in the day, okay? What I also said is that this mechanism is allowed in the international legal framework. Unfortunately, the victims are weak countries who don't have strong institutions and strong legal framework to go about it, and they need the support of the international community to break the wall of secrecy, okay, to have access to information for mandatory disclosure. So we know who is the beneficial owner of whatever shell company. One person at least is listed, Ibori, whose assets have been traced, and the release of the Panama Papers will certainly help not just Nigeria, but also the British authorities, because they haven't done the hearing on his assets yet. He's been convicted, he's serving his time. But now he hasn't finished. He hasn't finished. He hasn't finished. The assets now, they've traced some through this release. So it will help. So I'm not saying the Panama Papers are not important or historic. I said, and I do not wish to be misquoted, I said that it's early in the day. And government definitely, once all the facts are out there, I mean, I don't want to preempt anything. We can't say that some background checks are not already going on at the moment as we're seated here. Yeah. But I won't come and sit in Channels TV and say, yes, we have already started, blah, 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 and then preempt some of the findings. So that's my response.
Okay. Dr. Alabi, taking you back to what he said earlier about it's the responsibility of everybody. We all have to buy into this. Don't we have to go way, way back and start building up our values again? Because if you have a sense of decency, you would not like to be shamed on the pages of newspapers, on television, and your name mentioned as having to do with X amount of money stolen from this ministry and X amount padded onto this contract, and you are the one responsible, and the next thing they're cutting you off in a Black Maria.